And we
Same
lived on
thing.
Wow.
Ocean Park
Well,
and,
what got you to
Ocean
Los
Park.
Angeles?
and Church.
I never knew how did you get to Los Angeles?
Oh.
Well,
Well,
you there?
we were working for the labor youth, Leon and I, and we came here. And they were here when we became, we're closer enough to be close friends. Then the Labor Youth League, it dissolved because of Khrushchev's letter on the Soviet Union, which was, told all the stories that everybody used to deny. And so the Communist Party sort of dissolved, and we dissolved, and from 55, this was 56 to 57, and so we went back. Leon had been practicing law, and after I was at Bank Street College getting my master's. So he worked for my father in his father's garage for a while, and while I finished.
Remember the garage?
Where was the garage?
Remember the garage?
It was on
By Yankee Stadium.
by Yankee Stadium,
Bronx.
yes, on the Grand Concourse. It was under a building.
Oh my God.
I visited that building, because I had a project right across from there. With the concourse.
It was the same building?
Michael told me to we looked it up, remember? Because I did the Concourse Plaza garage and the parking lot and stuff, which is like right
There's
around
also
that mall right around the corner.
A family member that had a bakery on Leidick in the Bronx.
That was Minnie and Lenny,
Oh,
and Nat.
Beatrice
like
Wallet's
down Boston.
father, Morris Wallet, had a delicatessen called the Roxy Delicatessen, right down from the Concourse Plaza on 161st Street.
Well, that's
That
where
was
they
That's-
were.
yeah, that's right there.
Where they were.
That was his
My parents,
livelihood.
right, where my father was. So Leon worked for about a year, and then we decided to go back to, once I finished, we decided to go back to Milwaukee, where he could
That's
practice
right.
law,
That's right.
right. So we went back, and one day I get a phone call from one of my classmates at the University of Wisconsin. And she said, I somehow remember that you were a political science major. I'm teaching now at University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and we need somebody to teach one course, and we thought maybe you would be interested. Well, we just had a baby. Michael was still very young, and I said, and on top of that, I was a history major, and I don't think political science, I would be very good at that. So I said no. So about a month later, Leon and I are walking in the park, and he said, I could have taught that political science class because it was related to law. And he said, I think I would have liked that. So he called up the department, and they found out that the position was no longer open. But they said, leave your name, and for next year, maybe something would
There
come
were
up.
sometimes when you could just leave a name and that's it.
Right, so then, next year, they called him. We have a class that meets at, I think it was 7:30 in the morning. I mean, this is Wisconsin, it's crazy. But if you're interested,
Imagine.
so he went and he taught the class.
Did anybody attend the class?
Yeah. Good question. I mean, Wisconsin people are hardy.
Yeah, so.
They had just finished milking the cows in the barn, and they came right to the class. So he said to me, I really don't like to, essentially what came in the discussion was, he doesn't like particularly being just an ordinary lawyer. He had thought he would be a labor lawyer, or he went into the law school because of the politics of the time, and the leftists couldn't get lawyers for what was happening, and see, that was what he thought he would do. Well, just being a lawyer and handling personal injury cases and all this other stuff, that was not for him. And so he said, I think I might want to go teach law. So he went up to the law school and talked to one of his old law. Two things. He said, you'd be a very good teacher. I would write you a letter of recommendation, but I would have to mention in the letter, because I'm writing it to my colleagues in these different universities, that you were a spokesperson for a Marxist or organization on campus, and that you were involved in radical politics. So Leah said, I don't know what politics have to do with it. I mean, what does that got to do with whether or not I'm
Right.
And what year was this?
This was 1960 about 1960. And he said, you're getting old. He said, you're what, 33 or well, I don't know. And I was already old to go into law.
Right, because a lot of people are done in law school at 25 if you go straight.
Yeah.
Right.
No, he was just 30.
But he
was 30.
graduated law school at 22.
He was 30.
He was 30. Oh, okay. So whatever it was, he
was getting old.
He was getting old. So Leon decided to apply for a master's. No, so what this guy said was, if you really want to go into teaching this background, he says, you need to get polished. So you should go to one of the top law schools. He said, University of Wisconsin is a very good law school, but it is not one of the top 10. So you should get into a program in one of the the top 10. And he says the courses will be as exact. You'll know everything that they won't teach you anything new, but it'll give you a degree from. So he got into. I think he got into and got money from both Yale and Harvard. And Yale, he accepted Yale, and then Harvard came through with a higher amount of money, and so he changed and took the Harvard job. And that's how we got away from Milwaukee and the law practice. So we went to it was supposed to be a 1-year master's program, and he went to the law school association meeting, which was essentially a meat market. Everybody looks you over and you make little presentations and all that stuff. And everybody in his cohort, there were about 12 people that were getting masters. Every single one of them got an offer, and Leon didn't get one.
But he got an offer to teach in a law school.
To teach in a law school.
Wow.
So one of the people he had done some work for at the university, at Harvard, called him in. He said, something's wrong here. We can't understand why you did not get an offer. He said, there's something, and he said, so we looked at your application, and there is a period of time where there is a gap in your work situation. What were you doing then? So it was a very hard decision for Leon. He said because he felt it was none of their business. This is why what I did, you can check on all the things I did, but if I wanted to take 2 years or 3 years off, that was my job, my thing.
Or no.
But, so we went really into depression over this issue, because you don't wanna give in.
Right.
You don't wanna say you have the right to do that. But we had 3 young children, it's the old story. And so he told him that he had worked for the Labor Youth League, which is a Marxist youth organization, etc. And he wrote and this is what happened. So this guy said, look, you've got to write a letter to the faculty and tell them what you were doing in that period.
What faculty? The Harvard faculty?
The law school. FBI.
But why, so why was he told to write a letter to the faculty?
Well, no, I mean, because he was not getting,
No, but what were they supposed to do about it?
well, they were supposed to help him get into the,
And was
into
the,
a job.
was the idea that they already knew,
No, they didn't.
so they had to be given a reason,
They had to have a
explanation?
explanation, because they don't understand why he was not.
And so this guy's thinking was that explanation that he had been involved in radical politics was something that some people on the faculty would have no problem with.
No, he had to explain it, he had to explain it, give some explanation for why he was doing it.
Why
he
he was
had done
doing it.
Right.
And what he thought about it now.
Well, yeah, so you tell him what he wrote.
No, you do.
No.
Oh, I know.
You know, you
It's in the
remember
book.
Oh, yeah, so he wrote,
It's in the book.
yeah. He wrote a letter that you must have written together, which said basically that this is what he had done, that he didn't, there are things about it that he was critical, but basically that he stood by the principles involved. And
Danny wants to know why I've been silent. So, continue. My daughter wants to know why I'm not talking to her all day today. So I'll tell her why. I'm visiting.
Tell her cousin,
complain about that.
tell her cousin Alita's talking instead.
She says it's been radio silence from you. Are you okay? Continue, Michael. I'm sorry.
yeah, just and that basically he wasn't going to, that he hadn't turned into a rat either. That he had not gone to the other side basically. And that he stood by many of the principles, the basic principles.
Yeah, but he did it for good reason.
Yeah.
He might now feel that not everything, that he believed in before stood up to time, but that he doesn't feel ashamed of anything he did.
He doesn't apologize for it.
Yeah, he did it for for reasons that he felt
That he still believed in.
that he still believed in: justice, peace, all those
Racial,
things. Racial equality. Okay. So then this guy said, worked with the faculty and decided that they would offer him a what do you call it?
Fellowship?
Another year as a lecturer where
A
he would.
lecturer. A lecturer, yeah.
Yeah, to be a writing instructor for
Legal writing, yeah.
Legal
Harvard.
writing, right. And it was a 1-year appointment. So, it turns out that even this 1-year appointment has to be approved by the Board of Governors of Harvard. So it was the month it was brought up to their monthly meeting, the president of Harvard was out of town. So they said they could not make a decision on Leon because the president wasn't there. But at the same meeting, they fired Timothy Leary, who was a tenured professor at Harvard because of his belief in LSD and all that as a drug.
So just for the younger
I know,
you would not know this. This was a Harvard professor who was advocating the use of hallucinogenic drugs.
Yeah.
'Cause
Like
he thought
LSD,
they were really
acid.
mind opening, that it opened your mind
Yeah.
and
Well, he wasn't wrong. I mean, now they're talking about using those drugs for PTSD.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ecstasy too.
But they fired him, but they couldn't hire this little
had to
Leon
afford
for
to hire
1
him.
year.
So they were just
they didn't
passing-
need the president to fire him, but they couldn't, well, the president obviously knew that was coming.
Well, so we stayed an extra year, and so we came there in 62, we stayed there from 63 to 64. Leon goes to the meat market and is interviewed by a lot of people, is invited to several universities, but both universities cancel before he goes. And then he doesn't get any other offers. Well, then the Harvard faculty, including those who voted against giving Leon this 1-year appointment, were so incensed that the other universities wouldn't take their word for it. I mean, they were Harvard, for God's sakes. And if they gave him a job for the year, I mean, that gave him, yes, that gave him a status and
right.
prestige. And
Yeah, it was an insult to them.
it was, so they saw it as an insult to them. Well, one of the people that had been in his first year class got a job at UCLA, and he was a wonderful friend, and he kept pushing at UCLA, saying that this person was really exceptional, and that they're missing out on not having him.
Was he a law professor actually?
What, eventually, yes.
Eventually, yes. But
At
was he-
Harvard.
At Harvard, no, he was just a lecturer.
Yes, a lecturer.
Yeah, but
What?
it's considered, he was a lecturer in the legal writing course, and those are considered law professor type jobs.
Okay.
And professors at Harvard had him do things for them, write a section of a book they were writing, or, doing those kinds of things. So, so he gets, so things are changing politically at this point. Don't forget, when we started thinking about this whole thing, McCarthyism was still very strong, especially in academia. So that, there was, but it began to be lessened. And by '64, it really had gone downhill. And the universities, law schools were expanding. So they needed people. So they decided at UCLA to hire him for a 1-year lectureship in legal writing. And when he came there, so we thought, all right, he is not going to get into law to teach in a law school eventually, but we'll be in California. That's better than being in the East, right? So we went. So we went. Took that job.
But Alita, hold it, I thought you were very upset about leaving Boston.
I was upset about leaving Boston, but I knew, because at first I hated Boston, but then I got to love it, and I was also offered a job at Tufts in the early childhood program.
Your education, right.
Yeah, but I recognized that this was an opportunity to try out. We could always move if we had to. So we went there, and two things happened. One is that people liked him, and they started using him in their classes. Oh, I can't do gas and oil this Monday because I'm going out somewhere. Would you mind teaching the course for me, even though who knew anything about gas and oil law? But things like that. They would, and they were watching what what we could do. And then it's sort of the year that they offered him a tenure track job, which was '64, that fall. No, it was '65 that he got the tenure track job. It was a totally, the atmosphere in the country was changing by '65. So it was interesting because both Leon and the chairman of the Labor Youth League, who was also named Leon, got jobs at the University of California. He got a job as a microbiologist, immunology, doing in immunology, that was doing at Berkeley. And Leon got the job at the university, at the law school in UCLA. And one of the things that happened was, in the next year, the California Un-American Activities Committee and the legislature called both Leons. They saw it as a communist conspiracy, that both Leons had come in at the same time, and we're gonna take over.
Well, and that they were somehow responsible for the free speech movement, which had begun in
Oh, yeah,
64.
and just at that time, the free speech movement started, the anti-Vietnam
Yeah.
War movement started, and as soon as we got there for this 1 year, what we thought was a 1 year lectureship, we got immediately involved in it. So on campuses, there were all these teach-ins, there were, demonstrations, there were all sorts of things that we were involved in. Because we were not gonna stop our activism just so that we, that was not on our agenda. So that was what happened. And so when the law school hired him and then gave him this job, a ladder position, they started getting congratulations from all over the country, from different law schools, different law professors. Oh, when he came with that teaching, just with the teaching fellowship, he had 22 letters of support from the Harvard faculty because they were so angry at what had happened. And then when he got the tenure job, it was just that's when he got all the university got all these letters, and it was all of a sudden UCLA was now a hero in the academic legal community. And then in 66, Harvard calls and asks Leon to come and help with a program they were establishing for Southern African American students, so to give them a chance to feel what law school was like, and hopefully they would, some of them would get in places in law schools, because there were practically no blacks in the law schools that weren't black law schools. So, so Leon spent that summer doing that, and when he came back, he said that UCLA should start an affirmative action program. And since he had the experience of being as part, just a little bit as part of this, he pushed for it, and they started it. And for the next 10 years? 8 years?
No, more than that. They did it. Yeah.
There was this affirmative action program, and he was head of it.
No, he wasn't head of it for the whole time.
For the whole
He was
time.
just head at the beginning.
Right, but the other thing that happened was that the year that that he was given, the year of 65, when he was first appointed to a latter position, we went to a party, a New Year's Eve party, of some law professor that we hardly knew. And there was this guy we didn't know very much about him, but he had been, or was, the head of Tuskegee University's, Tuskegee University. And he was white, who had worked for the
Justice Department.
Government Civil Rights Division, and saw what was happening in the South. And UCLA and Stanford both wanted to hire him. I mean, the law schools of both those places. Leon and Dick
This guy is Dick Wasserstrom.
right?
Dick Wasserstrom.
And we sat down that night, and we sat and talked for about 4 hours. No party. It was just them sitting there and drinking wine and talking politics and how we felt about things. So we get a call from the dean's office a few days later saying, "I hear you met Dick Wasserstrom at this party." They said, "What do you feel about calling his wife Phyllis and telling her about the advantages of being in Los Angeles?" So here we were now being asked to try to bring this guy in, and he well, we did it, but we laughed with them about, this situation. Well, he told them that he would come to UCLA Law School only on one condition. And that is that Leon will not have trouble getting tenure because of politics. He said, if it's a matter, it's not that I want you to give him tenure, but he doesn't want politics to be the reason that he didn't get tenure. And what more can I say? It went on from there.
Alita, was there something about Ronald Reagan when he was governor having something to do?
Well, that was at the time of, he was one of the people that raised the idea of how come there are these two people.
Okay.
But it wasn't a free speech. I think it was the South African movement, divesting from South Africa.
Yeah, but that was in the 80s.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, so it wasn't then. So what was it? Why did they go up? Leon went up with Leon Wapsie, and there was a whole group of people.
Well, that was in the 80s. If we're talking about South Africa.
Oh, yeah, and that's when he was president.
President.
Oh, no,
No, no.
governor. That's when he was governor.
No, he was not governor in the 80s.
So
He
when
was
was he
president.
He was
He was
president.
governor,
early
he was
80s.
governor in the, from about 66 to
So then it was,
72, so 74 when Jerry Brown became governor.
all right, so then it was the free speech movement.
Yeah, because I
Oh, yeah.
remember hearing at some point that when Leon's appointment at UCLA was in the process, the governor weighed in some way
Reagan
against
was the
Leon,
governor.
Reagan,
Yeah.
against Leon.
No.
Well, more important than that, the FBI weighed in against him.
Well, how do we find out about a lot of these things, why Leon didn't get offers? What year was the church committee?
76, 75, 76.
Okay, in 70, that year, French Church or Frank Church?
Frank Church.
Frank Church, who was a senator, went, you're not tired? Well, Frank Church was a senator, and he did an investigation of a program that the FBI had called COINTELPRO. It was a program where they went after Martin
This is
Luther
so
King.
familiar.
They would, they taped him and all those things. And finally, and so he said that Leon's name had come up in this investigation. And it turned out that as part of it, COINTELPRO program, they wrote letters to every single school that was considering Leon as a professor when he was still at Harvard, saying, they would send things like, they sent a letter that he wrote when he was at the University of Wisconsin as a student, which, from the student newspaper. So just that was enough to bring to the people's attention that he had been radical. So that's the story. That's how we ended up in California.
Who asked that question?
I did. I'm guilty.
Now you know.
Guilty.
But that's interesting
That
because
was a fabulous story.
the story is fabulous, and Leon didn't do any, he wasn't even like in that direction completely. And he was politically in that direction.
Yeah.
But
It didn't matter at
but
that time.
but academically,
It had nothing to do
it
with
had
the academics.
nothing to do with anything.
But that didn't matter.
Was he
at that
ever a
time.
member of the Communist Party?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
But that he didn't say that. I don't think he said that.
Did he use his own name? Because my father
Yes, he did use
was a member also, and he did not use his own name.
Well, he was smart.
Well, Leon and Alita were public members. They were like
Yeah.
in the public leadership positions of the Labor Youth League, so they had to be who they were.
But when Leon wrote the letter to the faculty at Harvard, did he say he had been in the Communist Party?
I don't remember.
I think he had used the Labor Youth League, which everybody knew was the same thing. I mean, it wasn't,
Well, it wasn't quite the same thing.
everybody viewed it as the same thing, and it pretty much was the same thing. I mean, certainly through the
There were lots
leadership
of
of the
people in LYL who were not
leadership.
in the communist,
In the leadership?
No, not in the
Okay,
leadership.
okay.
but in the organization that were not.
But did people who were really straight and were not around the left at all know what the communist, whatever the.
Yeah, if they were at a school where they had a chapter, they might know. Like
The
in
only
Wisconsin,
school that had a chapter in the whole United States was Wisconsin,
because of McCarthy.
because of McCarthyism. And I told you that
That's fascinating.
the only reason we had a chapter at Wisconsin was that this guy, Carl Paul Link, agreed to be the faculty advisor. And Carl Paul Link was one of these sort of ACLU type, free, the First Amendment sort of person. Certainly not, he was not a Marxist by any means. And he thought we had the right to have a group. So he said he would do it. And it turned out that he was the inventor or the finder of warfarin. Right, the warfarin is the rat poison.
Is that poison, which is really, what?
Isn't that a drug?
Yes. it's
Wait a
drug.
minute,
I was thinking.
But
Yes,
in
it's a
those
very important
days,
drug today.
in those days, warfarin was only used as a rat poison. And it brought in billions into the coffers of the University of Wisconsin.
It doesn't allow the
So-
blood to clot, so the
Right.
rat
not the same
bleeds
thing,
out.
Right.
But in the right person, it's absolutely necessary because it prevents you from having a stroke.
Well, the thing is that now they put me on warfarin, which
Is
is
that,
it's called, yes, from the drugstore it says warfarin, but no, it's
Those
called.
are 5 o'clock pill, by the way.
And I just changed because see my,
Yeah, I see
that's
that.
all from just
Right, because you don't.
bleeding,
Your blood is
spontaneously. But the thing is, he not only served to allow our political group to function, but he saved my life at the end because now I'm limited.
Imagine
The web of life.
I mean, and you just asked a question, you just went from one, and I'm hearing it, and the names are going back and forth and back and forth. I said, I know that, I know this.
Sure you knew it.
Of course, this is my whole background.
Right. Exactly.
But it wasn't really academic. So there.
Well, you had no trouble getting a job in the New York school system, but at the time of McCarthy, when he was really strong, you would have had trouble.
Yeah, a bunch of communist teachers were fired.
We're
Never got their
firing
jobs
him
back.
from the New York City
Yeah,
schools.
from CUNY.
Mhm.
So there.
So there.
It's all time.
And they never connected any of those things along the way afterwards with any of my background, which was heavy in there.
I know.
You were a card-carrying member.
No, my father went to jail.
Oh,
My father went to jail during the, who was the other, not McCarthy,
In the 20s,
the 20s.
in the
Palmer-
red, what they call
Palmer
the Red Scare.
My father went to jail during the Palmer raids.
Right.
wow.
There.
Was he deported?
He was born here, wasn't he?
No, he was not.
That's right.
And there was a period of time where they were threatening to deport him.
And they did do it.
No,
to a lot of
they
people,
didn't.
but they didn't deport him.
They didn't deport him. I don't know why it didn't come to that, but it just never happened. Almost. I know what it was. If they deported my father, my mother had come to this country in 1930.
No, 19, like,
Wait.
20 something, early 20s.
Well, the Palmer raids were 1919,
1990. But my mother came here,
before the war,
wait a minute, after
She was
the
born
war.
1998, right? Or something like that.
18.
Wait, it was after the Russian Revolution, it was during the
Civil War.
Civil War, yes. She came here during the Civil War, and my mother, having come here during the Civil War, means they wouldn't accept her back there, because it means she should have stayed there, she should not have come here.
The Russian Civil War in 1914
That's right.
or
18.
whatever, 18.
Yes, that's right. She should
To
not have,
21.
she should not have come here, she
So
should
they
have
couldn't
stayed.
send him because she couldn't go with him?
Because she would have difficulty getting back in there.
Oh, so they couldn't deport her, basically.
So they couldn't
And
deport
couldn't deport him.
because it would have been hard on her. Let me tell you, how convoluted can your life get?
It's true. It's really true.
It's really strange.
Where were they from? What town?
In Ukraine.
You know where?
Yeah, yes, I know that it's something cross, within, and then I knew the name, I have it at home actually, because somebody else looked up the name for me. The name that my father, the town that my father came from.
It's different than your mom's.
She came from a small town, which was, and it's not the same one that he came from, but they were maybe 10 miles away.
Yeah.
Not that far away from each other.
My grandfather came from there also.
Mm.
Very, very.
And you're,
My grandmother, his wife was born in Odessa,
uh,
but he was from the
Belarus.
Ukraine.
right.
White Russian.
And what, well, Odessa was Ukraine too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I thought there was some Minsk or something.
My
Yeah,
mind is
Minsk,
like far away.
yeah, it was on the border of Poland.
That's what,
And what about?
My mother was not too far from Poland, because she walked into Poland in order to come here, and she found.
What about your parents? Were they
My
born?
parents were
And
born here.
Hayas
Oh,
helped her to discover that she had a relative in the United States, and with one relative, you could get somebody who would vouch for you and sponsor you, and you could stay here. So it was absolutely necessary. And when they said, and you have a profession, she said, oh, I'm a professor. Why? Because she knew Russian. She went to the gymnasium.
Uh-huh. Oh, like Bessie.
and like my mother?
Did your mother go to gymnasium too?
Oh, yes. My mother, in fact, had a year and a half of
And my-
university. Yeah.
So did my mother had in fact, she said she remembers going to the Ukraine because she needed to go to a bigger town, and the bigger town would have people who could ask questions. Like, when you were questioned as to what you know, they could ask you anything. That means anybody's educated. And so you needed an educated person who would have to ask you questions
Like to pass exams.
to pass
To
exams.
get into the university.
Yeah, that's right. But my mother was doing this during the Civil War. It was a funny time.
Mm.
During the Civil War, there was also a
Pogroms.
pogrom.
Wasn't your mother and Alita's mother about the same age?
Yes,
My mother
they
was.
didn't know each other. Not in Europe. They didn't know.
No, they didn't know each
Right,
other
right.
here either,
They didn't.
Yeah.
because your parents lived in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Philadelphia.
Well, my parents came to New York.
Oh,
They came to New York.
did they ever meet my mother?
My mother met your mother once she's related to you,
Oh, okay.
much
Yeah.
later, kind of thing. But it was just crazy. It was so crazy. They all were like on the cusp of knowing each other. On the cusp. Oh,
They could have met in Kimberlin. Lakeland.
Yeah, but
You're gonna
but
be-
they might have met in Lakeland and not have known that they.
Yeah.
What's Lakeland?
That was the older
Oh,
people's
older-
section of Kindleton.
It's the older people's version of Kinderland is a children's
Camp.
camp. Lakeland was the adult camp.
Shuffleboard.
Did you go, Erica?
But they were right near each other.